It's our weekly sports episode. Well, you might as well call it our infamous podcast about sports and stuff. Where on this podcast, you get to hear a little bit of information about what's going on in the sports world, what's going on in the video game world, a little bit of the technology information, get a little bit of a music knowledge chat, two of our personal faves that we do on the show, the artist spotlight, and of course the infamous ass of the week. So stick around. You might actually enjoy the episode. Hello. Welcome to July. Welcome to the past. It is your host, Big3, back at it again. I'm running solo today for good reasons. My co-host, it was his birthday week, so he celebrated. It was a couple of days ago, and it kind of trickled over into a few more days. So today he's kind of resting up and prepping on his journey. He got some other stuff he's doing too, so he did kind of give me a heads up on being solo, and he kind of I'll share this before I continue because I want to be fair in giving him the benefit of the doubt and also placing reality to truth. He did want to definitely help in today's podcast and recording with me, but when life happens, you got to do what you got to do, and things just happen. So I told him, I'm not a difficult person when it comes to certain things, and obviously my podcast is no exception. My friends end up learning that the hard way with me. I truly go into hibernation mode. I turn my phone off, my watch off. If I could, I'd turn data off on my tablet, but obviously I need the tablet for internet usage to share stories and get information based on what has or has not happened. So that way we don't have any broken podcast episodes like we've had a couple of months back. Thankfully, since doing it this way, this is week 2. I believe week 1, like last week, listening to the episode, despite even with the little hiccups, there wasn't even hiccups, just the event going on and announcements being made didn't really impede too much on the show itself quality. So I'm glad to know that was the occurrence and that was the case. So I'm not gonna I know that's kind of like a random intro, but I want to at least share that before I continue any further. So I'm wishing him happy belated. We unwound, had a good time, and that was all well and good. For me, as y'all know, I partied and had a good time and hung as I could. Pop mode kicked in, and I flipped the switch and realized, all right, I got a show to do. So today is that day, and everyone knows Saturday is kind of my day. So usually for the early part of the day, it's let me do what I'm doing, and then I come back and become a social human being to some degree. But not gonna really hit y'all with. I know that's like a lot of a 2% spiel. Before I continue, I do want to share that these episodes are being recorded and shared on Spreaker.com. The page has been helpful for me with getting podcasts uploaded, as well as placing them in their proper allocations for if I'm doing my podcast every day or weekly episodes as I'm doing now. We are a month away since today is July. We're literally a month away with starting podcasting every day in August. I am going to be doing that. I did mention that to you all before, but I wanted to make sure that I came back and addressed it again. And also, as I mentioned, the microphone used for the podcast is the Blue Yeti microphone. I always make sure I put those links in the description or in the show notes. One other note, because I do want to mention this before I continue. The page and the website is finally up. I finally have information. I have images. I have something on there. I do have some work to do with that. I will be redesigning and redrafting the logo because I know a lot of you all probably can't see it and have no idea what it is. And I fully understand, so I'm not arguing with you on that whatsoever. But I am getting things back in motion with working on that and working on, as I call it, my brand. So this has truly been and will be my baby, and I'm not changing it for the world. So I wanted to at least get that information and share those pieces of the puzzle before continuing any further. So without further ado, we do have, like I stated, I have a lot of, or as I always say each week, there are a lot of topics and a lot of things to discuss. Some topics I will go ahead and forewarn you. I always have my tabs that I share with you in the show notes each week, but there are going to be a lot of things that news did break on a lot of stories overnight, so they weren't really added to the podcast as, say, a specific tab or a specific topic. So it'll kind of be just you having to take that moment or two and just kind of do some research and see what went on in the basketball world. I guess I'll go ahead and tell you for that part. But our first story, or the first story that I'll be talking about, is as we mentioned on last week, Sunday was the Confederations Cup, which I'll talk about later. But on Saturday, on that Monday, there was the NBA first annual NBA awards show, which was hosted by TNT. I can't really say that I didn't like it, because I actually got what they were doing, because it was kind of like a spin-off. It was kind of giving it like an Emmy or Grammy Awards type of feel. And it was very formal, like everyone was at tables, they all sat, and everybody was dressed. Like seeing NBA players not have to be in a sideline attire. I'm not playing versus non-game attire. I'm dressed up to go. Like some of them, it's kind of almost similar to what they may attempt to wear for like pregame, except Russell Westbrook actually dressed up a little bit, so that was a good thing. We'll get into those awards as well, because some of them were kind of shoo-in, some of them were kind of questionable, but it was still all in all, it wasn't a bad show. Side note, because I normally don't talk about things like this, but I will, because it's the elephant in the room with the media, and I don't like to do tabloids if I don't have to. But it's just a coincidence that on Sunday, Remy Ma did her spiel on BET involving Nicki Minaj, and it was a unique coincidence that on Monday Nicki Minaj was performing at the NBA Awards. She didn't say anything about Remy Ma, which was, thank goodness, because leave it alone. It was better to just kind of let it be what it is. But don't want to harp on that too heavy. The award show, I feel as though majority of the awards they got correct or they got right. So I'm going to leave the big awards last, and then I'll kind of break down like the smaller awards that they did do. They did do a couple of what was defined as fan awards. I'll try to, I think some of them are listed. If they're not, then I'll hold it to my head, not my heart. The Community Assist Award was given to Isaiah Thomas. They gave the All-Rookie team. I'm not going to sit here and name everybody, because some of them I know, like Embiid, Buddy Hield, Brogdon were in the mix for that lineup. So that was a good showing. Let's see. Kemba Walker got NBA Sportsmanship Award. Defensive Player of the Year between Kawhi Leonard, Rudy Gobert, and Draymond Green. Draymond Green ended up winning that award. Most Improved, which I kind of saw as being the case, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak. He won that award. Coach of the Year had a unique circumstance, because Spoelstra was a high candidate, strictly because he was able to get his team, like they went 11-30, and then after that 11-30 run, they went 30-11. So they broke even going 41-41. So that wasn't a bad achievement. Houston actually, Mike D'Antoni won that award. I believe this was actually his first year there. So that was, props to him for that award. The NBA All Defensive Team, that team was announced. The first team NBA All Defensive Team was Draymond Green, Rudy Gobert, Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, and Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley and Chris Paul will be a unique story, and I'll get into that later. The Twyman Stokes Teammate of the Year award went to Dirk Nowitzki. Sixth Man of the Year award was a unique award because Iguodala was a candidate, but the other two candidates both happened to be on the same team, since Lou Williams was with LA previously as a sixth man and then was traded to Houston as a sixth man. He was a nominee, and Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon did win that award. Basketball Executive of the Year went to Bob Myers. And keep in mind also, I want to state this before I continue, these are all regular season based awards. Rookie of the Year went to Malcolm Brogdon. with the Bucks. Everyone kind of thought it was a good shot that Joel Embiid would win it. He didn't play He didn't play much of the season. Dario Saric had a good season too with Philly, but you didn't really hear about him much. I mean, you really didn't hear much about any rookies this year. It was kind of a quiet rookie class, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And then it didn't help because Ben Simmons was out. Ben Simmons didn't play any games this season. Brandon Ingram was kind of trying to feel his way into the Lakers rotation. And he'll get more time, I believe, with the trades that have happened. You know, we talked about it last week with D'Angelo Russell leaving. And I mean, even though Lonzo Ball is there, it'll kind of give a lot of the younger players a chance to shine. So we'll see how that all turns out. And Kia NBA Most Valuable Player. Who else? I mean, it was Kawhi Leonard was in the conversation, but he wasn't as big of a chance of getting it. Harden could have gotten it, but Harden didn't really. I mean, he did what we expected. Stat wise, he was close. Him and Russell Westbrook were very close in their stats for this year. If you were to go back and really look at it, if Harden had averaged a triple-double, it really would have made the conversation even more intriguing. But Westbrook won it strictly based on stats, involvement with teammates. He did average a triple-double for the season. He's only the second player to do that next to the Big O. So props to him for that. There were many fan awards that were given out. I do not have those directly in front of me at this time. But there were quite a list of fan awards that were given out for different awards, such as Dunk of the Year, Pass of the Year, things of that sort. Like, it was one award they gave where it was Pass of the Year, and it involved Draymond Green throwing I guess you can call it Draymond Green throwing a Hail Mary down the court to Steph Curry, who then threw an alley-oop over his head to Kevin Durant. So it was kind of like that play or those plays in that series kind of made during the season made it clear of how good the Warriors' chemistry was. So that happened, and I mean, you know, a recognition or props to everyone who did win awards. Those who were nominees, if you are able to go for those awards next year, bring your A game. That's the best thing I can say. So one story that stood out that a lot of people made a huge rift about was. For the All-NBA defensive team, when they announced the teams, one of the players who was snubbed or left out was Boston Celtics guard Avery Bradley. He's been a very quiet yet underrated defensive force. So there were a lot of tweets that were shared about it. Isaiah Thomas, of course, defended his teammate, saying, "Damn, Avery's smart." That's Marcus Smart. Or Jay Crowder didn't get all defense. That's a joke. C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard both spoke up. Someone need to be slapped. Avery Bradley ain't make one team. I won't say what he said after that. Damian Lillard said, "Shake my head. They not watching these games, bro." He responded to McCollum's tweet. First team. So the first team, like I stated, the mentions of those players. Bradley received the most points of those who didn't make either of the teams, even more than second teamer Giannis Antetokounmpo, 35, but he fell behind Memphis Grizzlies guard Tony Allen and San Antonio Spurs guard Danny Green at the position. So I guess the factor of the award was primarily based on positions more than it was placing. Let's see, New Orleans Pelican, and it's for the second team. So second team was Tony Allen, Danny Green, Anthony Davis, Andre Robinson, and why do I feel like I'm missing a player? And Giannis Antetokounmpo. Sorry, but it's just an interesting scenario of how it all kind of played out and turned out being for those teams, but. You know, it went the way it did. It was what it was. I wouldn't take it too heavily, but I mean, I know for most players it's a big deal, especially when it comes to trying to get bonuses and contract negotiations, things of that sort. And we'll talk about contracts in a few because I don't have the story personally stored, but I'm going to remember to address it when we talk about it. So As I mentioned with you all on last Saturday, on that Sunday, even though they didn't show the games until Monday, the Big Three's league started, and to put it mildly, exposure was made of how old these players are. That's the best, nicest, most relaxing way I can put it. They did add a delay to the viewing of the games, because like I said, they played on Sunday, but they showed them on TV on Monday night. So week one, you had quite a few injuries. Allen Iverson didn't play very long. He was actually player coach for his team. A lot of people didn't know that. Chauncey Billups did not play, if I recall, based on his attempt to pursue his role with Cleveland. It's a lot of players who just knew better to just kind of get out while they could. Corey Maggette had a slight injury. It was confirmed Jason Williams got injured. He went down. Like, it was just an unexpected landing, and they said he'll be out 6 to 8 months. Let's see. The early missteps could have been forgotten if the third or fourth matchups on the slate delivered high excitement. The toughest part about watching a lot of the games was there weren't many like true highlights within the game. So to give you an idea, because I had to look at the video of them explaining the rules for Big 3, and it made sense. It's just a unique way of it making sense. So the games go to 60. Halftime, whoever gets to 31st, it's considered the end of the first half. You're playing half-court basketball or 3-on-3. Every time you get a rebound, you have to clear it out at the three-point line. I mean, if you're on offense and you get your own rebound, you can put it back up. If you're defense and you get the rebound, you got to clear it every play. They have a 3-point spot. I mean, they have a 4-point spot, and I believe it was a 5-point spot. I could be wrong. But you would shoot, if you shoot from those areas, anytime you got fouled, you went to the line to shoot a free throw. If you shot at any of the spots and you were fouled, you would have to shoot that amount of free throws. And after a certain amount of free throws, after a certain amount of fouls, you automatically, even if it's basically like if you're in a bonus, then you get a free throw. You automatically get a free throw for those plays. A lot of people wanted to see AI play, but AI was not going to play. It was kind of clear and it was evident. Let's see. It just was not. It was the best way I can put it is it was an attempt. So week 2 of the matches, and so anyone who wants to understand, each week of the tournaments they play at different venues. So last week was at Brooklyn. It was at the Barclays Center. This coming week is going to be at in Charlotte. And each one is going to be kind of coming together. So we have a little bit of hope. And the article that I found kind of went a little petty, but they made it at least there's a glimmer of hope, because actually starting today is Summer League. So you have some Summer League basketball coming. But as you all know, I'll go ahead and make it clear, because I want people to understand this before I continue. I know I'm the basketball guy and I talk about basketball a lot, but when football season comes around, you'll slowly see basketball stories be phased out of the podcast and only kind of blend in as needed. So that is the main portion of the Big 3 showdowns and matchups. There was a little bit of trash talking, but I mean, these guys, like I said, you got guys playing in this league that are like a couple are in their 20s, not many, majority in their 30s, early to mid 40s. Like, I think one of the oldest players was like 42. So it tells you a lot right there. So we have our favorite, for basketball fans, it's a very unique part of the year. Last year, if anyone doesn't remember, there was a big uproar because of Kevin Durant leaving OKC and making his decision to go to Golden State. He didn't tell Russell Westbrook. There was a big turmoil about it. He was like, that's my brother. Why would he tell me? Things of that sort. This year, no exception. Chris Paul kind of got the ball rolling with no shame because it was already clear he wasn't going to be playing in LA. But the tension and the friction involved with him not playing was very interesting because it was almost as though he left and had this true tension about things being done in LA a specific way. Prime example, in Chris Paul's mind, he felt as though the Clippers didn't pull the trigger or take an opportunity on trying to get Carmelo Anthony. He felt there was a bit of nepotism, and if you don't know what nepotism is, I did talk about that in the podcast when I was talking about Patrick Ewing and his son being on the same team. It's kind of like a conflict of interest. Like, you don't have that rule. That rule doesn't apply in the NBA per se, but the disadvantage or the battle is his son was kind of being kept when he really wasn't going to get. I think it's a worry with him of not getting the minutes or getting the time on the right team. Because I feel like Austin Rivers is a good basketball player, but I feel like Austin Rivers should not have left school as early as he did. I feel like he needed at least another 2 years. I mean, to kind of get some weight, do something. But I understand, it's like this 1 year. I'm one of the top prospects. He ended up, he was drafted pretty high that year, but it didn't really work in his favor, I guess. The trade for Chris Paul. So the big story from this weekend, Chris Paul was traded from the Clippers and he was sent to Houston. So now you have Chris Paul and James Harden on the same team as a backcourt. There was a possibility that there will be a third player who I'll get into in a moment. But Chris Paul was traded for Sam Decker, Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, DeAndre Liggins, Deron Hillard, Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Whitler, top 3 projected 2008 pick, and $661,000. That way it was kind of like made as an even trade of some sort because, Chris Paul is going to expect somewhat of, he's kind of at the veteran's minimum. Well, after this contract, I feel like he'll be at veteran's minimum because he won't really be getting much money by this point other than just to kind of maintain and keep his brand in some tact. To add a side story with Houston, before completely fulfilling the trade, Houston picked up quite a few free agents. Some of them were actually mentioned in the list that I just gave. And they were part of the trade to get Chris Paul to Houston. This story, I don't have it as I mentioned earlier, I don't have it as a tab, but I'll talk about it now. One of the pieces in the draft, Lou Williams, was a little upset because he felt as though the nerds didn't really understand who he was and what was going on with him as far as him leaving the team. I'm going to find that article real quick because it was a very unique thing. And the thing that people don't understand, and I say this very often, and I say this with very strong emphasis. The internet is always going to win even when it's not supposed to win. And here's why I say that. So the story, and this is kind of, the carryover to it because now we're a little bit into it. Lou Williams tweets a message to nerds covering sports, and of course nerds strike back. So this is going back to the statement I made. The internet is always going to win. Lou Williams was traded for the second time in 4 months. That wasn't stopping him from having fun on social media. He was active on Twitter, and one tweet got people riled up because he wanted to talk about how it was crazy to him that these nerds cover sports. I'm going to get into that because I want to talk about this, especially me being a nerd and I play basketball as well. So crazy to me that all these nerds cover all sports, not one athletic bone in their body with all the opinions and analysis. All right, number one. So I can't speak for all other quote-unquote nerds of the sports or the technology community who keep up with what goes on in the NBA, but I actually play basketball. I haven't played in a couple of months, or almost a year, but I know the game. And I've also played the game well enough where if I was to get out and play, I understand it very well. Now, am I going to beat you in basketball? Absolutely not. You're a professional athlete who actually practices and plays this day in and day out. I'm an everyday guy who just has a regular job, but happens to be a podcaster and play basketball from time to time. So, you never want to throw. I think what Lou Williams, I see what Lou Williams was saying, but I also think Lou Williams approached this wrong, because you're wanting to make a statement in addressing those who are nerds who don't understand the game of basketball because they personally do not play the game of basketball or are not in the NBA. I'll give you that pass, but I also don't give you a pass for coming. You can, if you go come at anybody, don't come at the nerds. That's never a good idea. So with that being done, the nerds, a couple of people did respond or give input to it. Someone did say agree to disagree. I ran around the block with my dog twice yesterday. I'm actually going to save this story because this might be fun. So crazy to me that all these jocks complain about journos. Not one analytical, critical thinking bone in their body. Did I do that right? Some of us played, saw the ceiling, figured out sports writing was fun way to stay with sports. I played full court into my 40s. You're not in the movie biz, but you know a good or bad movie when you see one, and you can effectively analyze the plus minus of the movie. Well played. Lou respectfully disagreed. Not the nerd part, bunch of nerds. Please check out these amazing stats. And I guess he puts a story of when he played basketball, and let me see what that has. Sean Gregory played, average 1.6. He went to Princeton. So I guess it's showing that he did have somewhat of a stat line and did play basketball. This ridiculous tweet has been up longer than the amount of time Lou and the Clippers will spend in the playoffs next year. Oh. Wow. I don't have any words for that. I'm sorry for the white noise. Like, I was like, okay, that was just a true statement. Tell that to my fantasy basketball trophies. Someone else said played ball for the first time in months today, and Louis was right. I don't have an athletic bone in my body. So people had a good little run with that, and I'm all right with that. So that's cool. It's fine. But yeah, Chris Paul was traded. So that now goes into the conundrum of possible trades, free agency acquisitions, things that have happened and are bound to happen. I currently have not gotten any other stories. I can try to see if anything is updated that I may have missed. But from what I have gathered, before I go into the biggest, humongous story, number one, the NBA salary cap has been set to $99.093 million. That's going to be huge. Let's see, Rondo. So Rondo was waived. Gerald Henderson was waived. Nene was picked. Nene was given Nene was initially signed with Houston, but then they reneged the signing based on money. I think there was a $4 million difference as to why it wouldn't go through. And coincidentally, because I am looking at it now, it looks like there is some summer league basketball being played today. I must have missed some games. Oh no, this is the only one. I'm sorry. Okay, so Charlotte played Miami. Charlotte did win 74-67. I'm not some of the earlier games you won't really see. I won't really talk about summer league wise. It's gonna be when you get some of the bigger names. Like I want to see Boston play. I want to see how Jason Tatum looks in his first few games. But we'll talk about that as needed. Ricky Rubio was traded to the Jazz for their 2018 pick. Nick Young was released not too long ago. Iguodala is trying to see where he's going to be playing. Blake Griffin was re-signed. Blake Griffin re-signed with the Clippers because Rubio left Minnesota. That left their point guard position void. So Jeff Teague is going to Minnesota. Patty Mills did get signed. He did renew his contract with San Antonio. Let me see if I missed anything. That should be. I forgot that story too. So and then you have Kyle Lowry is still with Toronto as of right now. Gordon Hayward is still with Utah as of right now. Millsap is still with Atlanta right now. So they haven't. Nothing has really bit or no stories have broken about either of them going anywhere. Steph Curry signed a humongous contract. He actually signed the richest contract in NBA history. It's a $201 million contract. I don't have the specs for it in front of me because I didn't. These were stories that broke overnight, so I didn't really get them in to like. It's almost like when a story breaks and it's posted, like the newspaper's already been printed and been sent out, but there are other stories that happen, other things that happen that you can't get on that newspaper. That's kind of how these stories are working out. I just got a notification that the Rockets have made an offer to Iguodala, so hopefully that offer will be agreed upon with him going there. Wizards, John Wall got a 4-year extension. Let me see how much it's for. Let's see if that story comes up. It is 4-year, $170 million. Of course, and anytime I always like to say this, and I make sure I remind this to players, to listeners, when stories break about players getting paid, the money they get, they don't get that like $107 million broken down 4 years. It's not going to be the same amount each year. It's a base contract, and then it expands over each year, and then they get they may have a player option, things of that sort. Now to the big story, because I've stalled it enough, and I may as well just tell you all because it's worth sharing. Paul George, I believe he was 4 or 5-time All-Star, is officially with the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was traded last night. Like, it had to have been about 8 or 9 o'clock because it was, matter of fact, it was around 9 to 10. I'm sorry. And when I saw the message, I was like, no, this is real, because there's a couple more stories being shared. So Paul George is officially with the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was traded for Victor Oladipo and Diamante Sabonis. I hope I got his first name right. I probably did not, but I'm going to check because I don't like being wrong. Domantas Sabonis, excuse me. So, yeah, that trade did break. Everyone was expecting him to go to the Lakers, but that did not happen. So that's where we are with that. But those are as many of, if not majority of, the stories that broke in regards to the early stages of the free agency wildfire. I'll call it that. Because last year we had a similar instance occur. I think next year is going to be intriguing since you have LeBron is going to be up for free agency because everyone's thinking he's going to LA, so we'll see how that goes. But that's what we have on tap right now from those free agency stories. And I tried to kind of jumble them in. This, like I said, so this is where when I'm solo, it's a little different. Like when I'm solo, I just give you news, give you information. Giving thoughts on it is kind of hit or miss. Like with Chris Paul, I don't know how that's going to go yet because it's literally, I mean, you have two guys who are guard oriented. James Harden now will naturally be playing 2 guard, which is a good thing. Westbrook having a wingman helps him a lot, especially with the wingman being Paul George. I could see it's going to be tough for players to fight for positions on the All-Star team. I'll put it like that. I'm saying this now. If this podcast can be saved, marked, I'll even mark it myself. I am going to look forward to seeing what comes of that. So that's that story. Now I am happy to share that I think I spoke something into existence. And I'll explain what I mean when I say that. So, earlier as last week, as anyone knows, there was I'm sorry. Someone needed some help, and I'm like looking at it. I apologize, my fault. So there was a story mentioned initially about Phil Jackson having some energy issues, couldn't really stay awake during a draftee's practice session. Well, I guess there was the likelihood that he may be let go. And it turns out that after 3 years of him being with the Knicks, he was relieved of his duties. I think this is a step in the right direction. And I feel like, okay, so here's why this is an interesting circumstance. I'll kind of go off the hip with this a little bit and explain my little random spiel and why this was a story that I had to share. He has been there and he's been able to help them do small things such as get draft picks and kind of keep the money, keep things under control to some degree. Him and Carmelo had a little bit of a disagreement one season, and then this year it was him and Kristaps Porzingis. And it's a unique circumstance because as much as it may seem like it would make sense, it truly and honestly makes absolutely no sense for you to get rid of possibly one of your best players, one of your best like building pieces, to send them to a team thinking that that's just going to fix everything. And that's what Phil Jackson was willing to do because he just wasn't with everything that was going on with their team. And you could see that based on how he how he handled everything. And it was time. I mean, you kind of don't like when a result turns out this way, but it just ends up being the way it is. The Knicks and Jackson. So mainly they've agreed to part company effective immediately. The court careful thought and consideration, we mutually agreed that the Knicks will be going in a different direction. He's one of the most celebrated and successful individuals in the history of the NBA. His previous legacy is great. His branding now is not the same. Phil Jackson's passion for basketball has gone. You're not getting the Phil Jackson who was in LA. You're just not. You're not getting the Phil Jackson who was in Chicago and helping Jordan win 6 championships. You just aren't. When the trade, like I said, when the trade story came about Porzingis, that told everything. They drafted. Let's see. The reports changed. The reported change of heart came months after Dolan picked up the 2 years of his contract, and only days after Jackson drafted French point guard Nick Talina, 8th overall. And it was just a tough situation because you look, okay, so let's go over it. We'll break down who they've had and who they didn't have. So they had J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert go to Cleveland for 2nd round picks. They traded away Tyson Chandler and Raymond Felton to Dallas to get Jose Calderon, Samuel Dalembert, Wayne Ellington, Shane Larkin, and 2nd rounders. Out of those 4 players, none of them are with the team now. He publicly blasted Carmelo Anthony twice, admitting both times that he would be better off somewhere else. And then, of course, it was the severing of the relationship with the Unicorn. And during this season, or during his tenure, their record was 80-166. So as a president, it was just a tough thing to watch. So candidates who are on the board currently with them that they're looking at is actually former Cleveland president. I can't think of his name. They're wanting to bring back Isaiah Thomas, which I think would be interesting if that even happens. They're looking at the Toronto's GM. They're kind of window shopping as to who they can get that would like to run the team. Heck, I'll run the team. I don't care. I mean, I can't run them in the ground any worse. As long as you give me tools and pieces to get things in the right direction. And I mean, the salary cap works in your favor. Right now, their biggest money is going to Carmelo and Derrick Rose. Straight up. Because a lot of people don't realize, and that's why the Porzingis trade didn't make any sense. Porzingis is still in his rookie contract, so he's not affecting them financially as bad as he thinks they are. So that's how I feel about that. And our next story, I truly I usually like to have some type of preparation going on with certain things, but this one I kind of found and I thought about it and I was like, I will just share it and address it as possible. But currently the Russia 2017 FIFA Confederation Cup is going on. Last Sunday, a couple of matches were played. One of the matches was Germany and Cameroon and Mexico. Let me make sure I get it right. Germany and Cameroon and Australia and Chile. The Australia and Chile match drew 1-1. Germany and Cameroon scored one goal, and I think that one goal impacted Germany's mindset because Germany had already scored. I think they were ahead 2-0 at that point, and Cameroon had scored. And when they scored that goal, I think it kind of like caused them to say, "All right, we can't. No, that's not happening." So when that transpired, it caused them to flip a switch and they ended up scoring right afterward. And then it was also for numeric basis of who would be playing whom. Where we are now, you have, and these matches will be played tomorrow. Chile is playing Germany, which should be a pretty good matchup. Portugal and Mexico, I'm looking forward to that matchup being played. And yeah, those are kind of your main matchups we have going on right now with the Russian Cup. So I'll be trying to make with the Confederations Cup. So I'll be making an attempt to try and catch that and hopefully give you some winners and losers from those matches. And our final sports story for right now, Michael Floyd, who is a wide receiver with Minnesota, he was sentenced Monday to jail. He was sentenced Monday for 1 day in jail and complete the final days of his house arrest. Based on a December arrest from DUI charges. He'll be serving his day in jail on, I guess it was this past Monday. No, it'll be this coming Monday, excuse me. He'll be serving it on that Monday at 9 p.m. He'll begin the 5 days of his house arrest that following Wednesday. They state if any alcohol is found in the system, that it was a violation of the house arrest terms. Minnesota signed him expecting that he would be kind of getting things on the right path. And he kind of has, but they kind of got to do this to just make sure everything's kind of going in the right direction. The records show Floyd was tested 3 times between 5:30 and 6:33 a.m. on Saturday, June 11th. They're doing monitoring. It's monitoring developments of keeping an eye on his blood alcohol content or his drinking consumption or whatever. Floyd has contested that he drank several bottles of kombucha, a fermented tea which caused the alcohol to appear in his body. On Monday, Floyd told Hendricks he didn't have any additional comments. He was arrested in Scottsdale back in December 12th, fell asleep at the wheel, had a blood alcohol content of 0.217. I think the legal limit is like 0.008 most times, so he was well above. He was sentenced to 24 days in jail, 96 days under house arrest. He had already served 91 of those days as of June 12th. He was being tested 6 times per day under the terms of the house arrest, which was transferred from Arizona to Minnesota. So this started. This started this past Monday, and his Wednesday was the start of his house arrest. So he's still actively on house arrest. After the arrest, he was released by the Cardinals. He finished his season with the Patriots. Then he signed a deal with the Vikings. So the Vikings kind of knew what they were signing when they picked him up. All right. All right, let me go ahead and do my warning. We are now temporarily ending the sports section of the podcast. So if you are here for the sports podcast, I appreciate it. If you want to stay around for the techie talk and the stuff, tune in. We have more information to share. And more information to share is no exception because I feel bad because because I know someone mentioned this and asking me how do I feel about the Paul George trade, and I didn't really give much input to it other than I said you have a wingman. I feel like it's going to help Oklahoma City. It's going to help Russell Westbrook get an added piece. But I also feel like it's a tough position because you still have Golden State with 4 All-Stars on one team. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying they built a super team. I'm not saying it's anything. Because, I mean, like anything, Golden State could have not, and I'm going to say this before I continue, Golden State could have not been where they were if Durant didn't play. If Durant, let's say Durant's injury was severe and he was out for the regular season and the entire playoffs, Golden State would have had a good run, but it wouldn't have been. It would likely have been if they played against Cleveland. You would have had them. It would have been a flawless or legitimate rematch from last year because you had just about the same players on both teams from last year. So jumping, I just wanted to get that sports feeling because I know I always have my input about things and I don't give like the full perspective, but I want to make sure I address that or discuss it before going any further. So we good? Okay, we good. The techie world, the first story I'm going to get into, and I don't have much. There was stuff that happened this week, but I didn't really, stuff-wise, I really didn't catch many things going on that really I could throw into the loop of podcasting. And it wasn't that I wasn't looking, because anyone who knows me knows I always find the energy or find a way to try to get what stories are out there and get them to the listeners, because I love learning. For whatever reason, I love learning about these things, and I love sharing it with you all because it teaches me things that I really have never thought of or factored in with various circumstances or stories. So as you all know, and I believe I did talk about it last year in the podcast when we were the artist formerly known as Brite Podcast. But the NES Classic made its debut last year. It was out. They made supplies. They decided at a certain point, we're cutting off supplies. That's it. And if you got one, great. If you didn't, know well. Well, they're kind of taking the same approach this year with the Super NES. Super NES is going to be released. I believe do they have a date? I'm wanting to say November, but no date has been solidified from what I understand. But they're basically going to have according to the statement, Nintendo will ship the Super NES Classic is coming out on September the 27th. September the 29th. If I can read, it would be a great thing. But it's coming out on September 29th. They're bringing out the system, but there's a catch. Now, before I go into the catch, let me go ahead and give you a little bit of a comparison. From what I can look at with the system, it looks like they're going with it's going to be, the controllers that are going to be made for the Super Nintendo are actually controllers that have the plug similar to the original Super Nintendo. So that's a big deal. Also adding in the game selection, it looks as though when you had the original Nintendo, you had 30 games. On Super Nintendo, you're getting 21. You're still in the infamous battle, in the infamous fight of certain games not being allowed to be released. And it looks like suit is being followed on both ends. Dr. Mario, Tetris, no, you won't get those. Let me rephrase that. I believe Dr. Mario is on the original Nintendo NES, or the NES Classic. But the Super Nintendo Classic, or the SNES Classic, will be coming out on September 29th, and it's going to be out until the end of the year. So that means we have nothing to announce. Basically, once they have those items out, they'll have shipments, and they'll make shipments available from September up until probably around Christmas time. Once that last batch is sold, when 2018 arrives, as of right now, there won't be any other shipments or packages of them available. They put or state, or because I got this story from The Verge, while it might sound backwards for a business to discontinue a massively popular product, Nintendo isn't issuing an empty warning. The company discontinued the NES Classic in April, just months after its release. We've got a lot going on right now, says Reggie Fields Aime, President and Chief Operating Officer of Nintendo of America. We don't have unlimited resources. They're referring to the company's other manufacturing focuses, including Nintendo Switch, Nintendo 3DS family of portables, all of which are regularly sold out in stores and online. Not true. Well, Nintendo Switch, yes. 3DS, you can get one. I'm not sold on that. Nintendo's statement on SNES Classic concludes with a nod to its manufacturing juggling act. Our long-term efforts are focused on delivering great games for the Nintendo Switch system and continuing to build momentum for that platform, as well as serving the more than 63 million owners of 3DS systems. We are offering SNES, Super NES Classic Edition in a special recognition of the fans who show tremendous interest in our classic content. Super NES Edition may be easier to get than the NES Edition, but Nintendo could make good on delivering the rarest type of video games limited edition, one that's actually limited. I get what they're doing, and it's an ironic coincidence because you have the NES Classic, which was an 8-bit system that had 30 games, and then you're bringing out the Super Nintendo, SNES Classic Edition. It's going to be $80, coming out on September 29th, and it's a 16-bit, and it comes out with quite a few games. It's going to get, now what they are learning this time around is you're actually going to get 2 controllers, because the first system you only got 1. You had to buy the second one, and it's making sense for them to give you 2, and I'm going to explain why. I think I might have said this earlier, and if I did, hold it to my head, and I'm a heart, that's my famous phrase. But the port on the Nintendo system is similar to the retro Nintendo controller for the Wii and the Wii U, and I believe for the Switch. So that's the port that they have on that system. So you have a little bit more cord, a little bit more flexibility. With the Super Nintendo, it looks like the original Super Nintendo port, and so they're giving you 2 controllers, which I think is a good thing. Breaking down the list of games, and this is where making it so is probably gonna get a lot of people's attention. They're gonna have one of the games that's coming out is for the first time ever play the never before released Star Fox 2. So Star Fox 2 will be one of the games on the system. I'm inclined to look up, and I guess I'll do that probably tomorrow or some free time and check on my system if I have Star Fox 2. But anywho, on this system on the system that's coming out, you have Super Mario World, Super Mario Kart, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, F-Zero, Super Metroid, Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I don't know why I want to say Super Street Fighter. Super Punch-Out, Castlevania 3, Donkey Kong Country, which is a big deal. Mega Man X, can never go wrong with that. Kirby Superstar, Final Fantasy 3, Kirby's Dream Course, Star Fox, which is the original, Yoshi's Island, Legend of the Seven Stars, Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, Contra 3, Secret of Mana, Earthbound, and Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I read that right. And so they haven't really, like I said, they haven't given much information on it yet because they want to wait to see what's gonna happen with the system and not trying to promise you too many things. You can, if you go online and research, you will see they have different articles of people stating what games they think should be included. One game that was mentioned that I will admit would make a lot of sense to put on the system, but they won't do it, I know for a fact. You can't do it now, is NBA Jam. If they put the original NBA Jam, or even NBA Jam Tournament Edition, you come out winning pretty well with the system. But they want them, from what I gather with these systems when they make them, they're making them where it's limited, It's not going to have every single game that you prefer, but it's going to give you a selection of games to kind of start with and work with. And like anything, once the system comes out, probably within the first 3 or 4 weeks, someone will have hacked it or used Raspberry Pi or whatever and modded it so that you can access all games on the system. So just give that time, or just, if you're satisfied with. Some people are going to buy it and just have it as nostalgia too, so you have to look at that factor as well. So yeah, that's the rundown for that, and with Super Nintendo. I'm looking forward, because a lot of people have asked me and talked to me about it. I think it's going to be a great system. I think it's going to do a lot of sales. I just don't like the fact that when they make these systems like that, they don't have them out for a long period of time, and that's always an unfair or a bit of a disadvantage to those who are actual consumers and prefer to get their systems the way they do, or and play the games the way they do. So we will now, and I'm upset. Well, I ain't gonna say I'm upset, because this story doesn't really give all the teams, but it at least gives you a little bit of an overview of what happened. Last weekend, Street Fighter V made waves again, and I always love the waves they make, because they're very quiet waves, but they're fun waves. And here's why I say that. Red Bull is sponsored, one of the big sponsors, with Capcom Fighters or Capcom Pro Tour, however you want to term it, and they do a tournament. They do Red Bull Proving Grounds. Now, they normally do Proving Grounds. They do Kumite. They have different tournaments that are set up for different purposes and prospects and things of that sort. They have, I believe, Proving Grounds Open is coming up soon. But this past weekend, they did what they called the Proving Grounds Season 1 finale, I guess, or Season 1 finals. How it works is, it's not your average, everyday, run-of-the-mill tournament. It was in Santa Monica, California on Saturday and Sunday. You basically are playing it. So these individuals play in competitions hosted across North America and online. U.S. cities have hosted the events. Who have hosted the events are some of the U.S. cities who hosted were Orlando, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Chicago, Houston, L.A., San Francisco, and Seattle. And in the Canadian cities, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. There were quite a few notable players who were participating in this tournament who would become the top 3 players for each team. It's a 3v3 invitational event with 12 teams separated into 2 conferences, East Coast and West Coast. The winners will receive $6,000, with $2,000 going to each team member. It also includes round-trip airfare, entry, and a 4-day hotel stay to EVO 2017 for the winning team and the rest of the top 8 players on their region's leaderboard. It's a fun. I'm giving you like what the article states about the tournament, but I'm going to give you like a true interaction of how the tournament is set up. You are going to be. Well, I'll give you the prime example. Let's say Chicago played Orlando. Chicago plays against Orlando. Chicago has their best 3 players. Orlando has their best 3 players. Between those 3 players on each team, one of them is going to start off for each team. They play against each other. Whoever wins the best 2 out of 3 in that matchup wins and stays on. It's basically like you win, you stay on the sticks, and you got to knock off everybody on the other team, or everyone on that team has to knock off everybody on your team. Where basically, if you have no one enough to play against, then you've won that series or won that battle. A lot of the matchups that were played, and I'm gonna look up the list now because it was Dark Child. Dark Child was with the Philadelphia team. They used the term, and I love watching Street Fighter tournaments strictly because of the commentators who do certain tournaments. And one of the terms they use frequently is they gave a lot of bust ass. It was just a lot of beatdown and a lot of just annihilation in the making. And basically, one of the guy, Dark Child, his main character was Balrog. If you haven't played Street Fighter, if you go back to Street Fighter, probably Street Fighter 3. Matter of fact, if you go back to original Street Fighters, Balrog has been a repeat offender on numerous sets of the game. He would come in and he literally would knock out, like he would stay on the sticks. They would have him start off. And he would go against the first person, beat them 2-0. Next person beat them 2-1. Next person beat them 2-0, and he don't win the series for the whole team. And that basically, with doing that, that means that nobody else on the team has to play. Even if, I don't think he really gave, I think he might have gave up one set the entire time while they were in Santa Monica. What made the tournament even more enjoyable was one of the teams who played, I'm hoping they are on, they're listed on here, because the guy, the Cool Kid 93. Cool Kid 93's wife was there, and she had to be the true definition of a hype man. But she was a legit hype man. Like, she was really, like, because the venue was set up, it was like it was in an auditorium type of setup, where you had the auditorium, like, you had everybody sitting in, like, different seats, and then you had everyone just kind of look down to where they were actually performing. And they had, like, a system set up. Somebody was playing on here. You had somebody set up another gaming system, and then you might have somebody in the back just kind of doing scrims or battles or whatever. And you could just see the intent. It was it was quiet, but it was focused, if that makes sense. The most direct way of saying it is they enjoyed what they did. And it was, by Red Bull sponsoring, you'd have a lot of people drink Red Bulls because it's building the brand. But Philadelphia came in first. LA came in second. LA had Commander Jesse. Commander Jesse, if you're into Street Fighter and you want to see good Dhalsim battling or Dhalsim matchups, watch Level Up live late at night on Wednesday nights. It's literally called Wednesday Night Fights. If you have Twitter, hashtag WNF on Wednesdays, and you'll see the matchups that go on. And he runs a pretty sick Dhalsim. It's another guy who has Dhalsim, NYC Furby. He's on the East Coast, and he actually hosts Next Level Battle. So you'll see him run his Dhalsim from time to time. On Next Level, and I've seen this now with both Next Level and Level Up, they're focused and they give their time and their effort to Tekken, which is fine, but they also give more effort and more attention to I'm sorry, let me go back and rephrase that. They play Street Fighter, like they'll have Street Fighter tournaments showing up, which is expected or given, but they're giving more attention and more effort towards the Tekken community and getting Tekken out there. Tekken gets its attention. Injustice 2 is starting to get more play. You'll definitely see these games be known in heavy hits in a couple of weeks, especially next weekend with Evo coming. Trying to think what else I can give you on these stories. They do have the listings of everyone, the teams who were second place and third place for West Coast and the East Coast. On the East Coast, there was, I want to say, is it Charizzi? Charizzi, I think, he's with Montreal. He could play. It was one of the guys literally had like they would call it a cheat sheet, but he did his research. Not many people who play video games understand, like, it's almost like you got to do a scouting report. You have to know your character, know your matchups. Even if it's somebody you're individually playing against, that's one thing. But it's also an added bonus to have a knowledge factor of, like, who this character is, how this character plays, do they play to your style, things of that nature. So it was fun watching that and just seeing, like, the time and effort going into, like, knowing and understanding different characters. So I truly had a blast watching that. Now we're going to get to our artist spotlight or artist of the week. I would have had him as artist of the week last week, and I was close to having Jay-Z as artist of the week this week, but I guess I'll have to throw him in the queue at some point, and I'm exposing stories, but I won't be telling you. I know for a fact it won't be anytime soon. But we do have, since Prodigy did pass, and I didn't really, the story happened and it hit so quick, it was unexpected, but Artist of the Week is none other than Mobb Deep. Mobb Deep was the East Coast hardcore rap figureheads back in the 90s. They started their career in 95. First album released was The Infamous. And it, coincidentally enough, was a year after Illmatic and about half a year after Ready to Die. Of course, these were debuts for Nas and Biggie. The Infamous introduced the duo of Prodigy and Havoc. They set the tone for a lot of different hardcore New York rappers, from G-Unit, Dipset. It introduced Rock Marciano. They were influential. They did the album Hell on Earth. The following decade, they recorded for G-Unit. They were on their label. 50 Cent was on. 50 Cent was a disciple of working with their label, and they had other outlets. Prodigy and Havoc both grew up in Queens, but they met in Manhattan. They were both students in high school at a high school of art and design. They showed their love and their care of hip hop, and that's what kind of built their companionship. They were in '93. The label released what was called Juvenile Hell, which was a confrontational album. When they did return in '95, it was on a different label. They were an RCA subsidiary, Loud, and with a significantly developed approach. Infamous featured a Man with Street Anthem, Shook Ones, but it was a solid album all around. A year later, in '96, Mobb Deep then returned with a follow-up, Hell on Earth. It was a little slicker, a little different. At that point, hardcore rap was at its peak, so they kind of chose the right music or the right style of music at the right time. Following year, Prodigy worked on his solo album HNIC. Mobb Deep then resurfaced in 2001 with the album Infamy. They had a big song that was called Hey Love. That was kind of like their little, and it was, and if you listen to Hey Love, if you have not heard Hey Love, it was kind of like a hip hop blending over the R&B type of music. It included 112. The video got major play across the airwaves. Mobb Deep were then starting to kind of get into their, see their popularity kind of change up a little bit. They then ended up not having a label deal. 2002 through 2005, they released one-off albums through label arrangements such as Free Agents, the Murder Mix mixtape, America's Nightmare, and the mixtape Before 9/11. Then came a surprise announcement. 50 Cent had signed Mobb Deep to G-Unit. Then they did a remix of Out of Control. Early 2010s, Prodigy's 3-year prison sentence and a falling out with Havoc and Mobb Deep's put their future in question because there wasn't a certainty as to what would happen. They did attempt to do it an EP called Black Cocaine shortly after Prodigy was released. They resumed a couple years later, eventually issued the confusingly titled Infamous Mobb Deep, which consisted of new material and previously unreleased tracks. And the big story that broke was in 2017, on June 20th of this year, Mobb Deep was performing in Las Vegas, Nevada, and that was where Prodigy died due to complications of sickle cell anemia. Let's see if it has any awards. Try to share what I can with you all with them, because I mean they were what you defined as hip hop they were the epitome of hip hop in the 90s. They did because they did a lot. Like they did a song with yo, it's the real to make them feel like they all of those songs. Like you can play a lot of Mobb Deep music and like get taken to a good place with music. I liked my song was, of course, and this is where that R&B reference comes into play. When they did The Roof, it was with I don't know why I was saying Monica, with Mariah Carey, and it was actually a pretty good album, a pretty good single at the time. So yeah, there's that. Okay, now we're gonna get to Ass of the Week. So before I do Ass of the Week, I'm gonna go ahead and give a disclaimer, because I always have to give disclaimers because it's just who I am, and I always feel like I'm explaining myself when I don't need to. I had a few Ass of the Weeks this week, and I was all over the place as to how I wanted to address who would be the actual official Ass of the Week. Of course, Dimitri's not here, but even still, I can go ahead and do a reference to it because we always can find a way to blend Mr. LeVar Ball in as Ass of the Week. And it's kind of a two-part piece to this because he mentioned it last week, and I actually watched a video that kind of brought validity to him not being good in his word usage. But LeVar Ball, I'll give the previous story, then I'll give the current story, and then I'll give my actual Ass of the Week that I have listed. The LeVar Ball made a reference after Lonzo got drafted. He made a reference and made a comment in stating that he felt as though LiAngelo was not going to be good enough to go to the NBA. And it's tough when you're, in his case, it's already tough because he's the middle brother, but then it's even tougher because here it is, your older brother just got drafted, your younger brother is getting like humongous attention even after you've left and you're going to UCLA, to a top school, and it doesn't really get much credibility, but he still has had solid performances. I personally believe, and like I said, I know this is me throwing the sports story in there, I feel as though LiAngelo Ball will break through to the NBA. I don't see him leaving after 1 year. I'm not going to be rude and facade and not ignore it. Jalen Hands is gone after 1 year. It's a given. I'm looking forward to, because him and Colin Sexton won't be able to play each other because Alabama doesn't play UCLA. But UCLA, I mean, in the event that they both leave after 1 year, I could see them playing against each other in the NBA, and it could turn into some very unique rivalries. But that's just me thinking aloud. But that's the one story that was shared. Like I said, so it's one guy, he does videos on YouTube, and he talks about different stories and different breakdowns about players and sports and athletes. And he was talking about different metrics of LiAngelo Ball that's not noted because no one sees them, because they more so look at LaMelo Ball or they look at Lonzo Ball. So that's that story. Like I said, if you want to look it up, if you go, I can't think of where it's listed, but if I do remember and I go back and listen, I'll see if I can find the link and share it in the show notes. But I will share this. It's amazing when, even with LaMelo, with LaMelo Ball, with Lonzo Ball not playing basketball in the NBA yet, he hasn't laced up shoes, done nothing, and they've made an appearance on WWE. That tells you a lot. It was so bad to the point where LeVar Ball actually took his shirt off. He was having a conversation with The Miz, and it trickled into the attempt of wrestling, but it really wasn't going to be wrestling. And to add, and this is another side note, and I'll say this and then I'm going to let it go. I think that the media does things how they want to do it. And here's what I mean when I say that. Anytime, and this is kind of tying into the story that I found about the LiAngelo Ball not being acknowledged. If you look at most media stories, they give LaMelo Ball a lot of attention. They give Lonzo Ball a lot of attention. They don't give LiAngelo a lot of attention. Now, this is going to tie into, and you know what? I do have another Ass of the Week, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. LiAngelo is going to just have to make his own brand, but it's going to be part of the Big Baller brand. Now, whether he has his own shoe come out separately and it's $500 as well, that's another story. But just, it's things that you have to think of when you are part of what the media, how the media portrays or addresses things. And the media portraying and addressing things ties into the first ass of the week. So Sunday was the BET Awards. I'm not sure which one because I don't watch the award shows very often. A lot of people know I'm not, and it's not just I'm a BET hater. Oh, you don't support your own. No, it's none of those things. It's a lot of award shows aren't as good as they used to be, and it's me placing that high expectation on things that I can't expect to be any different than what they are. So with that being said, they had an award show and they were doing, I don't know if they call it red carpet, I guess it was gray carpet. They had they were doing interviews on the carpet. I'm just gonna call it carpet because I didn't watch it. And Complex News, who is becoming like the hip hop media quick fix for stories. Like if you need a quick fix to say, hey, I don't know what's going on right now with Karrueche, with Chris Brown, with Rihanna, whoever, Complex News has you covered. Complex News also does a little skit or a little story where two big names, Joe Budden and Academics, both will sit and have their little sit down and talk about different things going on in the media world, in entertainment, things of that sort. So on the carpet, both Academics and Joe Budden did an interview. And they were doing an interview with Migos. Now, I'm going to say something, and I'm sorry I'm away from the mic. Normally, I'll be in the mic telling a full story, but I hope you can hear me. If not, I'll just return. I'm going to say something, and I'm going to say this as nice as I can. And I've learned this, and this is something that even applies to me with podcasting. Not everyone can do this, like setting up a mic, talking, putting thoughts on paper, having an outline, coming up with an idea. Even with me hosting the show, if I'm going to have people come on my show or introduce themselves, or hey, I want to talk to you and get something out there that I'm doing. Yeah, but if you come on here and you talk reckless or stupid and it don't make sense, I'm going to call you out on it. I'm sorry. This ties into what the Joe Budden Ass of the Week moment was. So, Academics was talking to one of the members of Bad and Bougie. He was talking to one of the members of Migos. They couldn't hear each other very well. So, Academics couldn't hear the rapper, but the rapper could hear him. So he would be responding and they were misinterpreting each other. So there was a problem with that all being done. In the process, you have the producers who are in the background and we don't see telling them, all right, let's wrap it up. But we don't see that on TV. So, of course, Joe Budden makes the comment and saying, all right, we need to wrap this up. And one of the members of Migos, I think it was Takeoff, I don't know. No, Quavo. Trust me, if you sit here and think I'm gonna expect to remember these names, it's impossible. I'm probably looking at the wrong guy. But he was like, all right, well, let's wrap it up then. And Academics was still, talking with them. And by a certain point, Joe Budden had a tantrum and just got up and walked off the set. So when he got up, Migos is standing there like, well, what you want to do? And it's like, nothing's going to happen. Like, y'all got to think about where you are. You're at the BET Awards. You're in California. FBI, police, everybody. Everybody who's anybody is here. So let's really think this through and really look at how simple it would be if you do anything to jeopardize your future, possibly career. So with all of that going on, with that all occurring, there are two things that I've seen in it that made me understand something important. Number one, Joe Budden didn't want to be accountable for it, but he eventually fessed up to it and realizing that he was not really, he shouldn't have walked off and had a little tantrum like he did. And I know Joe Budden does podcasting, and I'm not coming. Let's be clear in what I'm about to say. I'm not coming for Joe Budden. I don't even think I have this as the hashtag. I'm just talking about it in general. But he could have handled it way better. And I mean, it is what it is. But it's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. So he had his portion occur. I agree with him on one thing though. Migos is not media oriented. They don't have any skills to do media. They're not meant to sit in front of anyone and talk to anyone about anything related to their music. Now, if you want them to go make an album and do music in that regard, no problem. Let them go. Let them do it. They'll be fine. But to get the full basis of them doing everything, no, they're not there. It's cute, but no, they're not there. They should not be doing interviews, and that was one of those examples of when they shouldn't have done an interview. But like I said, I admit, because he said it on Complex, Joe Budden did admit that he shouldn't have walked off, and he's not at that stage of doing that type of media, because he's like, hey, I want to talk to you and I want to have a conversation, and if we can't sit and have a conversation, then what's the problem? Like, what's going on? It's just like having, like I said, it's like me sitting here and doing a podcast with someone who's quiet, and I'm expecting them to have conversation, and they don't have conversation. Like, I've said this to my co-host, I've said this to Dimitri on numerous occasions. Dimitri is a people person, but he doesn't want you to think he is. But once you get him in the right conversation, he's in. Like, when we talk sports, it don't even matter if this tablet is open, it don't matter if this microphone here. We talking sports, and it's like it's an everyday conversation. So it's second nature for him. And for me, it is, but then I also have to make sure when I give information, like, let me make sure I'm giving the right information, because I don't want to be wrong statistically. And I know I said that very fast, but don't take it personal, my bad. But yeah, that's just something I've observed and noticed with just listening to music and learning music on so many words, and doing when you're doing interviews. So that was the first Ass of the Week, and I know that kind of did not really tie into who I would actually have as Ass of the Week, but this week's Ass of the Week is none other than an employee who works for the Missouri Tigers. I'm not sure he's on the basketball team, but he's a graduate. He drives a Volkswagen Passat, and for some reason, he drove the Passat into the arena and onto the basketball court, causing $100,000 worth of damage to the venue. They were able to confirm, Kwanzo Martin did confirm that there was nothing happened to the court. There was no major damage. It's just a couple of gates and a garage door, but nothing happened to the actual floor. They show a picture that basically displays the gate of where the press is, and that gate just basically got taken down. It's a very brief story. Like I said, if you want to look it up and go over it, it is online. I have it as one of the links in the show notes. I don't know. It just was not logical to me at all. But Nathaniel Content, he's the events assistant for the SEC network in the Missouri Student Directory. He actually turned himself in after the incident occurred, which that's a good thing. But Mr. Content, you get Ass of the Week hands down. Like, I don't know what else to say or how else to put it, and that's just how it is. So I have a little bit of time, and I truly thank you all for tuning in this long. I know most of my podcasts are normally long anyway, but this one I wasn't sure if it would or wouldn't be long, whether I had a co-host, didn't have a co-host, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to give, and I for some reason I do this sometimes when Dimitri's here, and I sometimes do it when he's not here. I'm going to give a closing message, and let me separate that for a second. I'm going to give you a closing message. I'm going to kind of make this like a home felt or a heartfelt thought to share with people who are listening. And this is also going to apply to those who listen to music or just something overall to really think about. Do not, and I repeat, and this is even for me personally, and I think this is why I'm so selective with, like, I have social media, I use social media, but I'm not engulfed by social media, if that's a good way to put it. Don't be consumed by what you hear or what you think is said without actually going to the source. Before anyone jumps down my throat and I get 1,001 messages or comments about this, here's what I mean when I say that. Everyone who posts, has a page, has a profile, enables comments, allows wall posts, allows replies, engages conversation, has the right to an opinion. Agreeing or disagreeing on those opinions is your personal choice. If you agree with them, that's fine. If you disagree with them, that's okay too. But when the disagreement becomes so lethal and so extreme that messages and thoughts are taken personal and misinterpretation happens, or God forbid we delete people on social media, then that's when it becomes a problem. And it shouldn't be that extreme to become a problem. And for the past 34 years, I have not understood that. Because before Facebook existed, people talked with each other, everything was cool. There wasn't no such thing as recording videos and putting people's business on blast. Now we've turned into subliminal, snitching, hiding, facading, double personalities, all of these things that aren't deemed necessary to get through life. And it just doesn't benefit in any way. And I truly get it now, and I'm probably going to say something that I might regret, but I don't even care at this point. I have friends, or I have associates, or I have folks who I know who I at one time was actually cool with, I was close to, I was friends with, and have been there with them through X, Y, and Z. A lot of those people I don't talk to anymore. And a lot of why I don't talk to them is because of things that I've said about social media or things that they say about social media that I may or may not agree with. But at the end of the day, if that person puts what they put on their page or do what they decide to do, me stopping them isn't going to change anything. That doesn't break the pattern of contacting them and saying hi, or whatever the case may be, or vice versa. A lot of it also comes down to choice, peace of mind, insanity. And if you feel talking to someone is going to cause you to blend into insanity or become insane, and you know you're about to run into the same wall with that person, it's better to just walk away. I'd say that now, and I address it the way I do because there's so much stuff going on in the real world that we get caught up in the social world. And the social world is temporary. The real world isn't going anywhere. Like social media, like Facebook closed tomorrow. Like I'm gonna leave. Okay, here's my closing thought, and this is what I'm gonna leave everybody with. If Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter all shut down at the same time, how would you react? What would you be able to do? Would you be able to go on with life? Would you be able to function as a daily, everyday, average human being? Think about it. If your answer to that is no, and you feel like social media is going to be your only way of knowing what's going on, you may need to find something to keep you occupied and away from social media. For me, obviously, it's my podcast. I know the only way the podcast gets exposed and shared and presented is through social media, but word of mouth still exists. Networking still exists. Talking to people that you know and finding out what you're doing still exists. Blogging still exists. Like, those options and those avenues are there. Insert your thing here. I just wanted to, like I said, this was not like I didn't want it to be too long-winded or too out the norm, but I also needed to like get that out of my system because I've thought about that for a while, and I've sat and looked at people being mad with me or me being mad with people about stuff that's just stupid, and it's like, grow up. And that includes myself. Like, that includes me growing up. So that's what I want to leave you all with today. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're not already following on Twitter or Instagram, past podcasts, I post on Instagram. I'm finally, between Instagram and Twitter, I'm learning to post more information. So you'll see me leak a couple of stories that are likely going to be in the podcast. So you're not waiting until Saturday to see what the image is going to be to talk about during the week. So I'm going to leave you there. Hope you all have a good Saturday. Happy 4th. Be safe. If you will deal with fireworks, don't do nothing stupid. If you're already on a major trip to south of the border, perfect. If you're in my area, you know about south of the border. But if you've gone and already gotten fireworks, please make sure you're doing those in the proper manner and not doing anything like to hurt or harm yourself. And on that note, y'all take it easy. BT signing out. Did you make it to the end of the episode? If so, I do appreciate you listening and tuning in. These episodes get more and more valuable, and I do appreciate everyone taking time to sit down and listen to the episode. Whether you're actually listening to it once it's uploaded on Spreaker.com/Brate Podcast, or if you're downloading it and listening to it on your own convenience. If you want to check out any previous episodes, just check out that page. And if you'd like to inquire or provide any information or feedback or suggestions toward the podcast, please send those emails to pastpodcastbt@gmail.com. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Enjoy your day. Have a good week and be positive.